Hello, good morning. How are you today? My name is Delilah and I love making things from scratch. I've always loved being in the kitchen and making things from scratch, but it's really only been in the last couple of years that I have started doing that within my own home. A lot of the things we used to buy from the grocery store that were pre-packaged and pre-made, I now make here in my kitchen from scratch. That means that I spend a lot of time here in the kitchen, and it definitely means a little bit more hands-on work. We are running low on some of those things that we usually have on hand. So today I am working to restock some of those items. There's no rhyme or reason to the food that I'm making today. There's no theme or anything like that. It's just the stuff that I either usually have on hand that we've run out of or things that I want to try. I'm calling this a pantry restock, but this is more like a pantry slash fridge slash freezer restock. Yesterday I made some buns and granola bars. You're gonna see that footage in just a moment. But today my list includes things such as granola, cookies, pickles, pickled onions. I wanna make some peanut butter banana bites, some lemonade syrup. We're gonna spend some time in the kitchen today. I'm gonna leave links to recipes, links to items in the description box if you're curious about anything. With that, let's skip to yesterday's footage. We are going to start with granola bars. Granola bars is something I've recently started making on a regular basis. This is something I used to rely very heavily on from the grocery store, and it just started getting really expensive, and I realized it's really quick and easy to make at home. So I make this for sure once a week, sometimes twice. And whenever I make this, I always do a double batch. They last a while in the fridge, but usually we eat them so quickly that that's not even a concern for me. My family really enjoys these. My husband especially really enjoys these. And I've been experimenting with different flavor combinations. The recipe I use is a mix of different recipes. I'll leave a similar recipe link down below, but today I'm experimenting with a peanut butter version. What I did was I subbed some of the butter for peanut butter, and I regret doing this. This made it a little bit too stiff and crumbly, especially after it had been in the fridge for a couple of days. So I would recommend not skipping out on any of the butter and instead just adding like an extra quarter cup of peanut butter to the mix. I also experimented with what I'm calling hot chocolate granola bars. These were really good. My family really enjoys these. I added half a cup of cocoa powder to that doubled recipe and then topped it with some Dandy's marshmallows and chocolate chips. I like to cut these up into rectangles and wrap them in parchment paper. The parchment paper is definitely an extra step, and if we didn't take these out and about, it wouldn't be necessary, but I do find that that parchment paper helps keep the hands a little less sticky. Because I was experimenting with different flavors this week, I had a quadruple batch of granola bars in the fridge, and this didn't last very long. Next up, I am making sourdough buns. This recipe is from my dear friend Sarah, and I tried it a little while ago, fell in love with it because it's so quick and so easy, and I can make it with my sourdough discard. So this is a great way that I use up my discard, and because it's so quick and easy, I can easily make these throughout the week. It doesn't take a lot of time or effort. I found I've been easily able to keep up with making these every week, and I haven't felt the need to go to the store to buy buns at all. I also use the same recipe to make hot dog buns, to make sub buns. I just shape them a little bit differently. Recently, whenever I make anything with flour, whether it's buns or baked goods, I like to mill my flour. I've been doing half fresh milled, half all-purpose. Ideally, I would do all fresh milled, but then the baked goods just get a little bit heavy and my family doesn't enjoy it quite as much. So I've been doing half and half to get some of the nutritional benefits from the fresh milled and then the fluffiness from the all-purpose, and I use a good clean organic all-purpose that I source locally. Usually I'm pretty good with being able to keep up with making fresh buns and bread throughout the weeks, but I really like to have a bag of buns in the freezer at all times, because when I am in a pinch, It's so nice to be able to have that convenience of just grabbing it from the freezer and having it ready to go. So if I am in the kitchen and say I'm making bread, I figure I might as well just make a batch of buns while I'm at it because it doesn't take that much more time and the dishes are already dirty. Having a bag of buns in the freezer means that I can make so many different meals in a pinch. So if I just am running behind for supper time, I can make sandwiches. I can pull buns out of the freezer for soup later. I can make burgers. There's so many things that you can do. A classic Mennonite meal I had many times growing up on Sunday afternoons was phosphor, where we would have homemade buns and spreadables, any kind of sandwich topping. We had just, a mix of all the toppings you could possibly have on a sandwich. We would have like ham, cheese, homemade pickles. There would be like peanut butter and jam and all the things. And we could just go crazy making whatever kind of sandwiches we wanted, and I loved it. And no wonder this was a traditional Sunday lunch, because my grandma would always make these buns ahead of time, pull them out of the freezer on Sunday, and she didn't have to do any cooking. No, I feel almost silly sharing this one because it's embarrassingly easy, but these are really good. So I had a bunch of bananas that were starting to go bad, and what I used to do before I had kids was I would make these banana bites. I'd dip each sliced banana individually into peanut butter, into chocolate, and freeze it. But that's really time consuming and not practical now as a mom of four. So what I did was I just lined a pan and I spread peanut butter all over the sliced bananas, and then I melted some chocolate with some coconut oil, drizzled this over top and spread it around, and then I just pulled out some hemp hearts to sprinkle on top. But this is where you can be super creative. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have to do peanut butter. You could do just chocolate, or you could do like a cashew butter or an almond butter. You could top it with coconut flakes. You could top it with anything. This has been a really fun summer treat that the kids have really been enjoying, and I've really been enjoying. Actually, there's still some in the freezer, and I might just go and grab one after I'm done this voiceover. Granola is one that you've seen me make a few times on this channel. I make granola about once a month, and when I make it, I make a big batch of it. I always make a double batch. If I'm in the kitchen and I'm making something, I'm almost always making a double batch, sometimes a triple batch, because I can save it for later, and then we have more later, and it saves me time in the kitchen later. This is a recipe I haven't strayed from too much. I just keep doing the same thing over and over because it's good. My family really enjoys it, and I haven't really felt the need to experiment with it much. I'll leave the original recipe link down below for you to reference to, but I'm going to tell you what I put in this instead. So because I do a double recipe, these are double recipe measurements. I do 6 cups of rolled oats, 1.5 cups of pumpkin seeds, half a cup of flax seeds, 2/3 cups, or more like 1 cup of chopped pecans, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a teaspoon of salt, half a cup of coconut oil, 2/3 cup of honey, half a cup of maple syrup, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Pretty much you just mix the dry ingredients, then you mix in the coconut oil, then you mix in the wet ingredients, spread it on a pan, and bake it for about half an hour. About halfway through, you'll want to pull it out and give it a mix and put it back in, and then again when you pull it out, mix it up again. It's not going to be crispy when you pull it out, but once it starts browning and looking toasty, you know it's done. So pull it out, give it a mix, let it sit for a while and cool down, and as it cools, it gets crispy. So once it's cool, I love to add chocolate chips because I'm a chocolate fanatic. My kids really love this too. So I add some chocolate chips and then I bag it up. I usually divide it into 3 portions because a third of this fits really well in this jar of mine. So I will divide it up into 3 portions. The 2 extra portions I actually put in my freezer, and it keeps really well in the freezer. In fact, frozen granola is really good. This one I am really excited about. My kids, every time they're playing outside and it's warm outside, they always come inside and ask for a cold drink, specifically lemonade. And I am just not a fan of the ingredients in store-bought lemonade or instant lemonade powders, and so I wanted to make my own lemonade syrup at home. And it's really not hard, it's very easy. It's a little bit time consuming if the only lemon juicer you have is a handheld one like this one. Make sure that when you're doing this, you don't have any open wounds on your hands like I did at this point. My hands were stinging by the end of this. But it was worth it. So let me tell you what's inside this. You're gonna need 3 cups of sugar, 1 cup of water, 3 cups of lemon juice, and 2 tablespoons of grated lemon peel. You wanna start by dissolving sugar and water together. So I did this over the stove and then I let it cool down. I then poured this into a separate bowl and poured my lemon juice in. I did pour it through a strainer because there were some stray seeds in the lemon juice and I didn't want that in the syrup. Then you just add a bit of lemon zest, mix it together, and your syrup is done. It's really easy, really fast. This is something I can see myself easily being able to keep up with all summer long. And the great thing is that this makes a lot. I ended up storing some extra in mason jars and actually freezing them. I've also heard some people freezing this in ice cube trays, which is genius, because then all you need to do is pop an ice cube into a cup and add water when you're ready for lemonade. So I'm definitely gonna do that next time. I did a 1-to-4 ratio. So I did 1 cup of syrup to 4 cups of filtered water. I poured this over ice cubes and I felt like this was the perfect lemonade strength. It was really good. I surprised my kids and my husband on a warm summer day with some fresh lemonade and they loved it. My husband said to have this on tap all summer, and so I will. I always love to have some kind of muffin in the freezer because they make a really great on-the-go breakfast or a quick snack in a pinch, or even if guests are coming over, I can pull muffins out of the freezer and I've got something to serve. And since we're on a lemon kick, I decided to try making some lemon poppy seed muffins. Again, I'm milling some flour. This is a soft wheat. So for my yeast doughs, I use a hard wheat. For my baked goods, I use a soft wheat. I'm hoping to source some einkorn or some other form of ancient grain to experiment with, but for now, this is what I have access to, so this is what I'm using. So again, I did half fresh milk and half all-purpose flour, and this was a new recipe to me. I hadn't made it before. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I can't say that I love these, although I will admit they did get a little bit burnt in the oven. I definitely left them in for too long, so maybe that's why. I might try this recipe again and not burn it and see how I feel about it then, but they were good, they just weren't great, and I feel like I could do better. I will leave the recipe link down below though in case you want to give it a try. To top off the muffins, I made a quick lemon glaze. So all you need for this is some icing sugar and a little bit of lemon juice. And just add enough lemon juice until it becomes a glaze consistency. I love making glazes to top things because it's just so quick and easy. To store baked goods like this, I have these large Tupperware containers that I really enjoy. They're the perfect size for freezing baked goods. I don't love the plastic, but I haven't found any other glass container like this. Since I was in the kitchen and I had cream I needed to use, I thought, why not make some homemade ice cream? I hadn't done this in a long time and my kids have been asking me to do it again, so I thought I would surprise them. They were gone this day. I thought I would surprise them with some ice cream for when they came home. This is just a very, very simple vanilla ice cream. It is 1.5 cups of heavy cream, 1.5 cups of whole milk, 2/3 cup of cane sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I added all the ingredients to a pot to dissolve the sugar and then let it cool in the fridge. Once it was cooled, I got my ice cream maker out and I poured the mixture in and just let it go for like 20 minutes, half an hour. I'm not sure how long it was going for, but I remember thinking in the beginning, there's no way this is gonna turn into ice cream, but by the end, it looked really good. It tasted really good. And my kids came home just at this point, so I was able to surprise them with this. Vanilla ice cream is what I love having in the freezer because it is the perfect thing to top a brownie or apple pie, or even just to have with some peanut butter as a treat. And I'll show you another way that I'm going to use this a little bit later. Of course, what would a cooking video be without some dish cleaning? Spending a day in the kitchen like this is so fun for me and I really enjoy it, but those dishes, they can pile up so quickly. I take a lot of breaks throughout the day to just make sure that the dishes are kept on top of. I find that if I just let this go until the very end of the day, it is extremely overwhelming for me and it's even harder for me to do it. So I just do it kind of as I go. I'll take frequent stops here and there. I also needed to make sure I had a clean sink because I needed to clean and soak some veggies for the next recipe. Alright, we're gonna make my grandma's homemade pickles. This is a recipe I have shared before. I've talked about it before. You guys ask me questions all the time. This is a quick pickle recipe, so it's really easy to do. It's really fast. You don't need a canner. You just need a pot and some ingredients and some jars. I have the recipe on my blog actually, so I'll link that down below. We were just about through our last batch of pickles, so I do this probably every couple of months or so. They last at least a few months in the fridge, and so I find making pickles every couple of months to be a very easy thing to do, something I can very easily stay on top of. So in the bottom of the jars, I add some onion and some dill, and then I chop up my cucumbers. For the brine, you're going to need 3 quarts of water, 1 pint of white vinegar, half a cup of salt, and 1 cup of white sugar. I got this all boiling in a pot, and while that was boiling, I chopped up some red onions as well. I figured while I'm here and while I'm making this, I might as well also make a jar of pickled onions because those are so nice to have for sandwiches, or, well, I guess we mostly just use them for sandwiches, but we really love having those on hand. I just used the same brine for those as I used for my pickles, and they turned out really good. Once the brine comes to a boil, I pour this over top of the veggies that are prepared in the jar. I poke the air bubbles out, and then I just let this sit on the counter for 24 hours before moving it to the fridge. Next, we're making some cookies, but before I could make cookies, I realized I was out of brown sugar. This is something that my mom always used to do. Like, we always bought brown sugar, but if we were ever out of brown sugar, she would always just mix together some white sugar with some molasses. And so I think I saw Sarah doing this recently. My dear friend Sarah, she is such an inspiration, and I realized I don't know why I've been buying brown sugar all this time when I can make my own at home. And so she inspired me to make my own brown sugar. I use cane sugar and molasses to make my own brown sugar, and it's really quick and easy. And now I can make some cookies. I tried this recipe out a little while ago. I was filming a video, it was a chit chat video, and the cookies turned out so good, and a lot of you were commenting on these cookies. This is my new go-to chocolate chip cookie recipe because it's really yummy. And I wanted to have some cookies in the freezer. Again, this is something I just like to have in the freezer at all times. I always like to have a bag of buns, some muffins, and some cookies, or some form of baking. So this recipe, again, I'll link down below, but it is 1 cup of softened butter, 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of brown sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 2 large eggs, 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I did half fresh milled. 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of sea salt, and 2 cups of chocolate chips. We were having company over that night, so I wanted to have some fresh cookies for us to eat, but then I also wanted to have some cookie dough in the freezer for when I wanted fresh cookies. So if we are having company over another time, I could throw some cookie dough in the freezer and I can have fresh cookies to serve. Or if I just want a late night snack but I don't want to bake a whole batch of cookies, I've got a bag of cookie dough balls in the freezer that I can reach for. I wrote all the instructions on the Ziploc bag so that when I go to bake these later, I know exactly what to do and I don't have to look up the recipe. Ice cream sandwiches. I was not planning on making these, but since I had the cookies and since I had the homemade vanilla ice cream, I thought, why not? I cannot explain to you how yummy these are. I actually have a few left in the freezer still, and I'm very tempted. I am very tempted to go eat one right now because they are so yummy. I really enjoyed filming this video and I would love to film more videos like this in the near future. So stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe and like this video and I will see you guys in the next one.